So let me share my slides, which will guide me through it as well. As I say, they are the slides that we use as well to report to Lloyds Bank Foundation. Let me just put those in full screen. So in Telford and Wrekin, hopefully first you can see those slides, and also I'll check with you again when we move to the next slide to make sure that slides are moving okay. So you should now be able to see them, so let me know if you can't. So within Telford and Wrekin, these are system change updates for the last quarter, which would be April to June. And it also talks about some of the things we're particularly excited about in the next quarter. So hopefully now it's changed to the next screen. So just to help those who are new to the work, we are focused in Telford and Wrekin on aspiration and unlocking potential. And this wasn't a topic or theme designed by Lloyds Bank Foundation, who are working in 6 areas in the UK, working in a different way in that people within the borough set the theme. And having a series of workshops, we settled on aspiration and unlocking potential as the key driver for change in the borough, and something we could all work towards. Interestingly, it's in most strategic documents. And if you go to conversations out in the borough, you'll constantly hear the word aspiration. I was at the Telford Business Board this morning, counted it mentioned 6 times. So often we're all talking about aspiration. This is the opportunity to all work together. Think about that. If we all worked together, we'd crack it, wouldn't we? And that's the whole idea. How do we bring everyone together to focus on a theme? So it's for people of all ages to reach their full potential in life, people to have opportunities to reach their potential, and challenges are identified and lead to real change. And how are we going to do it? Build a collaborative partnership through our alliance, which is, I think it's about 200 people now in the borough understanding about the work that we're doing. And we framed unlocking potential because it's huge into 2 areas, and it sits quite nicely under the Marmot principles. If you've not heard of the Marmot principles before, there was 8 social determinants of health. That means if we get those 8 right, people should have happy and productive, healthy lives. 2 of those principles are everyone reaching their capability and control over their own lives, and everyone having access to good and fair employment. And those 2 seem to fit really neatly into aspiration and unlocking potential. So does another one, which is about early years, but we are focusing particularly down on those 2. And to strengthen community-led organisations as part of that, because that what might be a way of finding new ways to design and resource services so that people facing the most complex needs in our borough will have the services they need when they need it and how it best suits them. So it's really important that we have the people that change affects or impacts upon as part of the discussions as well. So who's involved? Well, there's not a single sector that can tackle aspiration on its own. We all know that. And it's about bringing them all together, the right people round the table to make real change happen. And that would be the public sector, community organisations, people, private sector. And over the last quarter, really, as a kind of oversight of that, certainly the DWP and the local authority are engaged in the employment discussions. But in the education, whilst the local college and the education quality leads, so they're within the borough local authority, are engaged, but there is much, much more work to do to move others from informed to engaged. And I'll come to that in another slide. So we have got some challenges there to overcome. And community organisations' reputation, I would say, is high in the 2 focus areas, whether it's education and employment. And now through strengthening the infrastructure work that we're doing in working alongside COG, we're seeing people begin to identify the changes that they want to see happen. So we're really seeing a big change now I think in the community sector becoming stronger. People, the community explorers, remain actively engaged at the moment. And in addition, we are seeing a small growth in interest from people and organisations wanting to shape change within community sector infrastructure and access to fair and good employment. So we're starting to see people, individuals, wanting to take leadership roles and sort of ambassadors for change in those areas. In the private sector, the business sector, employers, we now have 11 employers committed to plan, engage and develop ideas to provide fair and good employment for all. So they are employers across the community and public and private sector who are coming together to look at how they can assist and work with community organisations to make significant and real change in respect of gaining work, good and fair work. And I'll come on to their work in a moment. And then I just usually list to who's come into the conversations over the last quarter, either new conversations or deeper conversations with people who've been informed, now moving to engaged. So definitely the DWP getting more and more involved and engaged in the work, the Department of Work and Pensions, Telford College, lots of different officers and leaders and managers are getting engaged within the work now. We've also, in the last quarter, had stronger and deeper relationships with the probation service, exploring how education impacts within their sector. Talking to STEP, Shropshire and Telford Education Partnership, and Telford Education Employment Partnership about understanding objectives. So many different education partnerships there. And there lieth one of the challenges, and I'll come to that a bit later. I've been talking to the Job Box about approaches to career days. That's come out of the employment discussions. And also had conversations with DWP and Shropshire Youth Hub. So I discovered the Shropshire Youth Hub, and we've been out to see the Shropshire Youth Hub, and that's new, and we're seeing how successful they are, how, you know, what could help them get bigger and better, and where they might identify some of the gaps within their services, and how we can support more organisations perhaps to adopt a similar model if we believe it works. And we're talking to the Education Skills Lead in Telford Council, identifying issues in relation to school attendance. So those are the kinds of people we're engaged with. I mean, the more people, organisations engaged in that, but those are some of the new conversations within the last quarter. As I say, I'm very happy to take questions on any of these after we've recorded the presentation. So what have we actually been doing in the last quarter? Well, we've held 2 strengthening the community sector events, bringing together people across the community sector to plan for change. That's really important because while we've essentially got those 2 themes focused down on education and employment, if it is that we believe that one of the strongest partners to come through and can attract different funding, it's likely to be the community sector, working with the public and private sector and people. So we need to strengthen that sector alongside the others in order for them to meet some of the challenges and the changes that might be ahead. So that work is continuous, and we're engaging with them to develop shared visions to appreciate the assets available, identify gaps and opportunities, and respond to change in Telford. Alongside funders and COG, which was the Chief Officers Group, but now is referred to COG because it's much wider than the Chief Officers Group within the voluntary sector, we're developing a proposal to resource COG to deliver its strategic aims in providing greater support to the community sector. We're doing that in very practical terms. We're providing that greater infrastructure support to COG members. We're freeing up time and resources to focus on strategic development of the community sector in Telford. We're doing that in a very practical way. We acknowledge that the people leading the vision and change within COG are volunteers, chief execs of community sector organisations, and anybody who's done that kind of dual role will know as much as you want to put the energy into change something, it's you and your voluntary and spare time. So what we're doing is we're going to resource from Lloyds Bank Foundation an admin role to support the COG for a period of a year, and we are going to contract out a piece of discovery work to understand how within Telford we could further and strengthen and support the voluntary sector to become a much stronger and connected sector. So we are going to pay for that piece of consultancy work, localised consultancy work. Also met with interested public and community organisations who want to work more collaboratively to reach and engage the local community. And there's some of you here will know this is something a lot of us have been asking for a while. Why is there lots of duplication within the borough? what if we work together on some community engagement work, and therefore pool our resources. So we've had those meetings in order to explore how aligning values, objectives and pooling resources provides a more sustainable and valued approach to engaging with people across Telford. Now, we weren't pushing against the closed door. We were actually having the door opened for us, because several organisations, the police particularly, leading on from the ROC conversation, and Telford Mind, were all gathering resources, funding, and realising they were probably duplicating other work and activity that was going on. Wouldn't it be great if we all got together? So they are probably the founding voices in this space. And now we've probably got about 12 organisations across public and community sector saying we want to be part of this. We want to have a more intelligent sharing approach to engaging and communicating with the wider community. So that's really been promising, and that's been building within the last quarter. We've held 2 maturity matrix events. If you don't, and that's a system that judges how good a system is with self-improvement. I would describe it in the most easiest and accessible way is it takes a photograph in a sense. It's a tool, but it's visualizing where we're at with the work at the moment. And it allows us to see where we're trying to get to and how we're going to try and do it. So it does a lot of scaling. So we held 2 of those events. We were supposed to judge 9 elements on a matrix. Within the community discussions, we only got past 1 because everybody wanted to debate and discuss vision in the borough, and nobody got to the other 8. And in the education topic, we brought people together in the education sector. They got as far as 3. But they were powerful conversations because they ascertain where we're working collaboratively to address the challenges and opportunities, and then where the gaps are. Gonna have to do some more work across August, September to finish the other elements, but that's for another day. Further conversations with Telford and Wrekin education and skills, identifying a possible area of focus. So talking to the education quality leads, it's not just me, it's other members of the Alliance. One of the emerging topics coming out of it is, if we're really going to tackle aspiration, it probably starts with children's transition between junior and senior schools, when that attainment is dropping off, where absence from school is dropping off, and we believe aspiration is vulnerable. So what is going to happen now is we're going to further those emerging discussions to identify and understand a starting point that the education sector will buy into within the borough, to consider who now needs to come together to help determine if this is the right area of focus. So no good as throwing lots of time and energy and getting the right people around the table to realise actually that children's transition isn't the issue. So we want to do a bit of work first to say, actually, is it the transition that is the area? So the next steps there is some heads of school are coming together to say, actually, are they comfortable that this is the focused area of work? And we bring all the sectors together to say, how do we resolve, fund and resource the changes necessarily here? So it's all about finding the issues first and then the solutions, not throwing things in that might not be the right solutions to the right thing. We've held an employer meeting in the last quarter, those 11 employers coming together, discussing in-work support to people with disabilities. That's what they were talking about the last meeting, but their next steps and where their emerging discussions are coming out is the current career and skills support. So a lot of conversation from the employers about the value of career events and to whom. And they want to explore that a bit, but they want to discuss that in a bigger ecosystem of how do you unlock the challenges in providing good and fair employment, and how do we discover the gaps and opportunities in career skills support from an employer's perspective, but working with other community sectors and the wider diverse communities to make it work. So again, what's working well in the borough? How do we build upon it? You know, there's some great work going on in, as I say, the Telford Youth Hub to help people get ready for work, give them the confidence, but they don't have ready employers coming in and out of that environment either. So maybe we can do something about that, and we can start all working together to make a much stronger approach. I've also been working with the Ghanaian and meeting with the Ghanaian and Nigerian communities that are going to be at the next employers event, where they have a different way of supporting their communities. So how can we understand what they're doing, and how can we bridge the gap to better employment for some of the diverse communities, all working together to find solutions. And we've funded 4 local emerging leaders or change allies to attend several conferences, one of them being the Shared Place Learning Summit, and to improve knowledge of it. And the reason we do that is because so it's not seen as me just bringing ideas or 1 or 2 people bringing ideas. We keep informing. It was really interesting. I was talking to somebody who went to that conference, the Place Matters one in Birmingham, and they came away and said, oh, it was fantastic. But Anne, it's going to take a long time, isn't it, to make change happen? And I thought, even that realization as an emerging leader is really important. So it's to improve knowledge of others in order to develop greater understanding, sharing the learning and closer working together in the borough. And always keen to support emerging leaders, anybody who wants to develop in order to make this real change happen. And we've also held 2 further community response forums and continued shaping the SSE Organisational Resilience Programme. So we have been doing a series of community response forums, which I'm probably smiling in this, but you probably visualise it now. It's a community organisation, charity, or perhaps group of people who want to develop something within Telford community, but they've reached a stumbling block, or they need someone to help, and we might be able to help them in that forum. So community leaders coming together, or just people who are interested in supporting the community, coming together to provide or hopefully direct people to solutions. I smilingly call them the dragons without the money, but they're the kind of dragons with knowledge. And oh gosh, they're probably really exciting 2-hour sessions. I really value those, and people coming to them get a lot from it. And the SSE, for those who don't know, School of Social Entrepreneurs, Lloyds is funding a fully funded programme over a period of 8 to 12 months. And we've got now 11 representation from Telford on it. So again, it's making them involved in the work and creating resilience. And the great thing about that is, of those 11, some are public sector, understanding what it takes to be more resilient as a community. And we've also got the private sector going as well. So really good forming of networks there, cross-sector networks. And why are we doing those? To test, evaluate and refine a personalised offer of support to new and developing local community organisations, developing resilience in our communities. And I attended the Open University Collaboration Conference, joined the Mental Health Forum in the quarter, and I've also joined the regional and more regional health equity network groups. And that's developed my own knowledge. I'm very happy to help and fund support people to go on to any of these as well. And it's to develop knowledge, explore ideas, understand what's going on regionally and nationally, and make better use of resource funding and reach the benefit of all. For example, there is a great piece of work under the ICAN model in Birmingham, and it might be some of the solutions for some of the things we're looking to unravel within the employment conversation in Telford. It might not be a perfect match to cross over, but those employers are interested in the ICAN project. And the ICAN project is employers coming together, getting rid of job titles, and therefore just saying, these are the skills we're looking for, not do I fit into that job title. So we're going to have somebody come along and speak to us from the Birmingham ICAN. So again, trying to work out what's available to us. So having that more external regional and national reach. And I usually do some sort of human voices from some of our conversations, which kind of helps. I mentioned one earlier where somebody said this is going to take a while, isn't it? Other voices from the area. This was from our education maturity matrix event, a public sector attendee saying, I haven't heard of a discussion around shared vision until today. And that was about a shared vision for the education sector as a whole, so across sector. And in the same meeting, a parent said, a lot of things are done in schools for kids and teachers, but the parents are not included. So it's not joined up consistency for the kids and won't challenge generational difficulties. So these are some of the comments we capture, and helps us maybe test the temperature in a few years' time to see if people feel any different. And that's what we need to work together to change. So what are we excited about in the next quarter? And I always stop and think about that. What am I excited about? To support the work of delivering the vision of shared decision-making power with diverse Telford communities. We've got some commissioned contracted work to support Telford at the moment. We've got a resource from an organisation called Ferns Livingston, and they are coming in to the borough to work as an additional EDI resource to our work. I've got a particular objective I want them to work to in Telford, and I don't know if this rings true to any of you, and this is what I want them to work on. It's good to look diverse. It's good to feel diverse, but does it make a difference? And if even we looked at the picture on the right, you could say from the outset it looks diverse, and if you know some of those organisations there, you'll know that they represent diversity in a whole range of socioeconomic, disability, cultural. But is it making a difference? So I am asking that organisation to look at the work we're doing in Telford and say, okay, we may look and feel diverse, but is it making a difference? Are those people confident enough to speak, engage, and really influence the change and become the leaders of change? So that's what I'm getting them to focus on in the next 6 months that they're going to be with us. So an extra resource, really. Continue building the foundations for a stronger community sector in Telford, enabled through the work with COG. I mentioned earlier that extra funding we're putting in, organisational resilience programme, strengthening the community sector through events, and funding conversation is growing about getting more funding into the borough, and also those charity response or community response forums. The employers meet again on Monday, so I'm always excited about that as well, to support employers and stakeholders in their emerging needs and discussions to understand current activity and gaps in the provision of work, of that particular work-ready support, careers and skills activity. So having a plan for change, big change, not being afraid for it to be big. And this work should help identify next steps to discovering how to improve access to good and fair employment in Telford. To complete the Reimagine recruitment journey, demonstrating how it's informing change. So last year we ran a series of Reimagine recruitment, what it could look like if we have never heard of it or didn't have recruitment routes in the borough. And we reimagined it with a whole group of people, from job seekers to those supporting people get jobs, and from employers. We don't want to lose any of that. So I'm going to write it all up. Sadly, some of you know what this looks like. It's only when I go on holiday that I can do that sort of thing. So I'm going to write it up. I did have it on my list for last quarter and didn't get to it. So I'm hoping to just spend a bit of quiet time in the sun, writing up that Reimagine recruitment journey, so that we can see the journey we've all been on. To continue to progress talks with the educators, skills leads within the council to understand the key issues being felt by the sector, along with understanding where wider community interest in improving education might begin to best influence change. I'll come to that in a moment. Achieve the aim of strengthening the voluntary sector and the community sector in Telford and Wrekin by providing that capacity. So at the moment, we're working on the final contract for that discovery work. We're commissioning and funding, and that will be released on Monday. I'm waiting for local organisations to bid for that opportunity to lead on that local decision making and informed decision making for COG. And then to continue to support Terry in facilitating the vision of partners to collaborate their resources in order to engage with the local community and take the values to date from the community explorers into these sessions. So how can we get those organisations really keen to work together to a point that they know what that looks like and they can get on with it? So we won't lead on it. We're just giving them and convening the space for them to get on with it. But what the challenge can be sometimes is they look to me and Terry to do the actions instead of owning it. And that's always going to be a challenge in this work. And we have to keep building against it. And then to continue to understand engagement with this work, whether it feels owned, or this is the issue I've just raised, does it feel owned by the community? Examining who is actually involved and how can we encourage them to do so? How can we encourage other people to be the leaders of this work? So my honest appraisal, let's start with the one I accidentally brought up and didn't wait on a click. The maturity matrix. Whilst, this is my honest appraisal of some of those topics, whilst we did not achieve what we set out to do, and I have had a little rap on my wrists about that from Lloyd. You were supposed to do 9, you only did 3. it did give space to different conversations, an opportunity to change the norm, ask the question, and to hear from a breadth of views. We had in that meeting, particularly the education one, parents, students, education support organisations, and the education sector, all talking about shared visions, etc. It was great. We couldn't get past 3. We spent 2 hours on it. But we will convene again in September and try and do the other 6. So there was one problem. Nice problem to have. Shifting power, voluntary sector infrastructure significantly progressed in this period, I think. Shifting power discussions, there's now a clear narrative of how this infrastructure work underpins other areas of work. So there was a comment made in the last quarter from somebody from the community sector who said we now need to set our own visions. We don't need to follow that of the local authority. They're losing command and control. We now have to hold that control of the community sector, and we're getting bigger. And it really felt a kind of sense of ownership of the community sector in the borough, whereas perhaps they've been looking for others to do something to hold them together before. Now I can see a real shift in that happening. Working more collaboratively, we mentioned it a couple of times, seeing those organisations wanting to come together to work in a different way. I think we've just got to make sure that they're not looking for other people to do that, that actually they're wanting to manage and hold that themselves. We just convene for them and we help them work out how they're going to do it and then take ownership of it. I think the education talks are a bit of a mixed bag, to be honest. We have a clear leader from the young men and young people we work with, Tom. He really, through his experience of education in Telford, wants to lead the change, to see how we can look at that transition period. He thinks that's the period of time to look at as well, and to focus down on that area of transition. And this progress has been helped by building relations with the sector, but not really everyone in the sector, I have to say. So certainly parents are coming together, certain elements of the education sector are coming together, and it's going to be a slow process. The education sector and the walls they build around them are really hard to break. There are certainly people working with the odd school and doing that really well, but there is not a committed vision to work across the whole borough collectively and collaboratively. I don't know who they're referring to. That might be an interesting comment. But what I have learned over the years within this work is those that we think might be blocking or resisting are not always blocking and resisting. Sometimes they are just too busy. They've got it's seen as an addition and it's happened recently. A public sector organisation will go, well, do you know, Anne, what we really need help with, particularly our department, is this, and we will give you the freedom within this and share some funding and resources to do this bit of work. And then you go away and you think, that's amazing, we've made a real breakthrough. And then you stop and think about, hold on a minute, whose interest is this? Is this the department's, or is it the entire cross-sector's interest? Does it fit in with the bigger picture, or is it distracting us? And we know as organisations and community organisations, sometimes we get distracted. So I think sometimes we've got to learn to pause and say, actually, it is a good piece of work within that department, but who else could actually help with that? And does it need to be part of these talks? And how could we help them, but do it a different way and keep on track with what we're trying to achieve? So I think there's a bit of that, and we need to be really careful of it. So that's kind of my headlines, highlights and challenges. And I just want to say thank you, and I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm just going to ask Terry, because he's doing some of that work, if he wants to add anything to what I've just shared. Terry, you're on mute.
You'd think we'd get used to it by now, wouldn't you?
You would.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for your time this afternoon. Just quickly, really. So the last few months, I've been working with the community explorers to explore the work that they've already done and engaging with some of the communities and some of the individuals and gaining views from the community and feeding that into the main work. And we've had some interesting comments, especially from young people around education. And it's interesting that the parents said that a lot of things go on for teachers and school. I had exactly the same comment from a young person in a youth group who said it would be really good if the parents were more involved, not for anything but other to understand how school is for us and what goes on within school. And that was a young 14-year-old. So I thought that was quite interesting. So we're now starting to work and looking at bringing all these organisations together and that joint value of how they work together, but also how do we then integrate the work that the community explorers have already done to ensure that it firstly doesn't get lost and that we build on it. You know, what we're finding is that people want to talk to us, people want to give their views, and they want to see change happen and in some cases be part of that change. So how do we do that in a way that meets everyone's needs? We've had a couple of meetings, obviously, to bring groups together, and I think those have been really enlightening in respect to the values that people are bringing to it and the reasons why they want that to happen, but also that exploration of some of the difficulties that may happen along the way, especially when you've got so many competing issues that people have to face on a day-to-day basis. So I think that's really all I wanted to say for what we're doing. We're obviously continuing that work and supporting as many groups as we can to take on board the shared vision, but also to take on the work, because that's where the strength will be and the legacy of the work that we're doing.
Thank you, Terry, and thank you for the work you've been doing. I'm going to stop recording now. So stop.